Hey guys, Corey, Faymus Media. Today I got a head-to-head showdown. It's the Zeiss Otus versus Sigma's Art. So the battle of the Otus and the Art, let's sit here and talk about the fact sheet. You got 12 elements in 10 groups on the Otus, 13 elements, 8 groups on the Sigma Art. You've also got 9 diaphragm blades in both. They both do 1.4 all the way to f16. The Otus weighs 1,030 grams, whereas the Art weighs 830 grams, so it's not much lighter. The Otus allows you to adjust the aperture manually here as well, whereas the Art you cannot, but it does have autofocusing. Now, when you're sitting here looking at the focus ring on the Zeiss, once you get to infinity or closest focusing, it actually has a bump and you can't go past. It doesn't have that override manual focus that Sigma, Canon, or Nikon have, whereas, you know, on the Sigma, once you get to infinity or closest focusing, it'll hit a bump, but then you can continue to turn and nothing happens. So it's a little different there. Overall, the quality, I would say that the Otus is a 10 out of 10 and the Art is about a 9.8. The only spot that loses quality in the Art is that the lens hood is plastic, whereas the Otus is aluminum. Other than that, no big deal. I think they're just about neck and neck in every other way as far as heft and build quality. I feel that the Sigma Art is actually a better lens than the Canons or the Nikons. Just quality, build, price, and overall the quality of the images you get, you just can't go wrong. It is a stellar lens. Sigma has stepped up their game huge over the last 2 years with the Art lineup. I'm shooting on the 18 to 35 1.8 on the red right now. It's a fantastic lens. Even the 20 to 35 f2.0 lens is superb to anything comparable in price. Sigma Art lineup is just amazing. So starting with the closest focusing distance, the Otus will do 20 inches, whereas the Art will do 16. Therefore, you'll get more shallow depth of field, slightly more with the Art, especially at weddings, given the fact that it has autofocus, you can get those kind of shots. So if you're an event photographer or a wedding photographer, you might want to just go ahead and get the Art, as it's fantastic and it has autofocus. The Zeiss is completely manual, meant for studio portraiture and stuff like that. I don't recommend trying to shoot an event or a wedding with a manual focus lens. You miss one shot and you only get one opportunity, and that is it. So it's manual focus, so be aware of that if you don't already know. But the 50mm focal range is the most popular, so if you're just getting started, this is probably the lens you're looking at getting for the first lens in your lineup for a prime. If you already have primes and you already have 50mm, you're probably looking to upgrade. Well, the question here is Otus really worth 4 times the cost of the Art? You have to look at it. The Art has autofocus, the Otus does not, but it does have the ability to adjust the aperture on the ring on the actual lens mount, which is not that big of a deal anyway, especially, like I said, for event and wedding photography. So really you have to ask yourself, which lens is the better lens? Well, I don't doubt the Otus is probably the better lens and most likely is going to win. How much though is the question, and is it really going to be worth 4 times the cost? A lot of people will speculate all over the internet saying, oh, the Otus is the best, there's nothing better. Yes, maybe so, but this test needs to happen because the Art lineup is flawless, and with the build quality and the optical quality that it has, and I would love to see how well it compares to the Otus. Now, the Art does have 3 special low dispersion elements. The Otus is already handling aberrations phenomenally. In fact, there's practically no aberrations in any shot I've ever seen with the Otus, so the Art is trying to compete there as well. But we're going to go ahead and see how these lenses stack up against each other. Like I've said multiple times, it really comes down to cost versus quality, and that's where we're going to let this showdown begin. So let's see which lens performs better, and I'm expecting it to be the Otus, but is it really worth 4 times the cost? Let's find out.
Off to the good stuff. Time to compare these lenses side by side. Pay no attention to the exposure difference as we're focused here on sharpness. At f1.4 and f2.0, the Zeiss seems like it might be slightly sharper, but it's really hard to tell at 100%. At f2.8, other than the exposure difference, which I apologize for, they are both pretty much identical. By the time we get to f4, both lenses are looking phenomenal, and as we're moving along to f8, the trend continues. The images get so sharp, they start to hurt my eyes. But all kidding aside, the lenses look great. At f11, we're talking tack sharp, and end-to-end perfection in both images. F16 continues that trend even further. So let's go ahead and crop in 300% to get a closer look, and as you can see at f1.4, the Zeiss does seem to ever so slightly edge out the Sigma, but it's a very small difference. At f2.0, they're both pretty much neck and neck. By the time we move along to f2.8, you can see the trend continues. Both lenses look phenomenal and pretty much equal in every aspect. At f4, this trend continues. Both lenses super sharp, and I mean super sharp, and both about neck and neck. At f8, it does seem like the Zeiss slightly, and I mean ever so slightly, edges out the Sigma, but by f11, they're both neck and neck again, which says a lot considering the Sigma is 1/4 the cost. At f16, once again, this trend continues. They're about neck and neck. Now let's take a look at the aberrations test. Considering the Zeiss Otus has no aberrations whatsoever, let's take a look at the Sigma Art at 1.4. There's very slight aberrations, but not very noticeable at 100%. And by the time we get to f2.0 at 100%, neither lens has any aberrations that can be seen at 100%. They both perform very equally here. The Zeiss is a great lens. We know it's awesome, but it's phenomenally awesome how well the Sigma is performing for 1/4 the cost. They both look fantastic. So let's go ahead and crop in 300% to get a closer look. And while the Otus does have some slight aberrations at 1.4, it is definitely outperforming the Art. And by the time we move along to f2.0, the Sigma does close the gap. And as it's getting closer, there's still slightly more aberrations, but not by much. And by the time we get to f2.8, both lenses perform phenomenally well and are about neck and neck, which is saying a lot once again due to the price difference. By the time we get to f4, it's the same thing. Both lenses, practically no aberrations. They both look phenomenal. Anything above f2.2, 2.5, they're about neck and neck. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bokeh test. And as you can see at f1.4, the Zeiss has slightly creamier bokeh in the background. It's creamier and smoother, but the autofocus elements are slightly rounder on the Sigma. And as we get to f1.8 and f2.0, that trend continues as the Sigma's autofocus elements stay completely round, whereas the Zeiss are a little bit more blotchy. But the background is definitely creamier and smoother overall. So it's pretty much up to the individual which look they would prefer. But as you can see at f4, the Zeiss definitely has more octagonal type autofocus elements. So let's go ahead and take a look at the edge sharpness. And at 1.4 on the bokeh shots, you can see they're about neck and neck. Moving along to f1.6, again, they stay pretty much neck and neck. Both lenses perform very well. At f1.8, you can see this trend continues. Both lenses performing well, although the Sigma Art slightly edges out the Otus. And at f2.0, believe it or not, this is pretty shocking. The Sigma is the sharper lens on the edge, as well as f2.8. Sigma continues this trend, and when we stop down to f4, the Sigma is clearly the sharper lens in the edge sharpness test. It's really an amazing thing to see that a lens at 1/4 of the cost can perform pretty much equal in almost every aspect. And while the Zeiss may have slightly less aberrations at f1.4 and f1.8, and it may be slightly better in sharpness at f1.4 when cropped in 300%, that's really considered nitpicking, wouldn't you think? The Zeiss truly only outperforms the Sigma at f2.0 or below. And while it does do this in some aspects, is it really worth $3,000+? Not really. Considering the Sigma has autofocus as well, you're getting a lens that performs pretty much neck and neck, and it has autofocus, meaning that wedding and event photographers who rely on autofocus for their once and only shot are going to have just about as good a quality at 1/4 the cost. And they're able to have, once again, autofocus. Sigma has really stepped up the game here as you're getting such amazing quality at such a very low cost. And while the Zeiss may be the slightly better lens below f2.0 in certain circumstances, due to its price to performance ratio, the Sigma is definitely the smarter and better purchase.
So hopefully you've had fun watching this head-to-head comparison of the Sigma Art 50mm 1.4 versus the Zeiss Otus 55mm 1.4. And what it really comes down to, as you can see from the results, the Otus is slightly sharper at 1.4, but not a whole lot. And as you move through the aperture range, the Sigma actually is neck and neck with the Zeiss, or pretty much as close as you're ever going to get to being neck and neck. Of course, the aberrations on that test, 1.4 the Zeiss wins. It's slightly better. and as you move up to f2.0, it's about neck and neck as you make your way through again. The real big advantage to the Zeiss Otus is that at 1.4, it maintains true sharpness, and it also maintains practically no aberrations at all. Perfect edge sharpness and great creamy bokeh. So if you're asking yourself, is the Zeiss really worth 4 times the cost of the Sigma Art? You have to ask yourself, are you a big studio portrait photographer or working with big magazines? Because if you're not, then the answer is no. In any practical situation, events, weddings, any type of stuff like that, daily shooting, the Sigma Art is the better lens. The Zeiss marginally outperforms the Sigma Art. Almost everybody in the world that looks at the photos would never know the difference in which one it was shot on. So is it worth 4 times the cost? Like I said, depends on the shooter, but in my opinion, absolutely not, considering the art. It's not saying that the Zeiss is a bad lens, because it's still the best prime lens ever made, in my opinion, for quality, but because of its cost, it doesn't have as much bang for buck as the Sigma Art. The Art is a flawless and fantastic lens, and it's priced so incredibly low. In fact, if you ask me, way too low. The lens is worth quite a bit more than they're charging, so that's what makes this a hard comparison. But hopefully you guys had some fun today. I'm actually shooting this on the Otus. We're gonna go ahead and switch over now to the Sigma Art so you guys can see what they look like on the red. So here we are shooting on the Art 50mm 1.4. Just a fantastic lens, like I said, guys. Hopefully you guys found this review helpful and had a lot of fun. Got the D5 and D500 review videos coming out as well. Like I said, if you want a great lens, they're both great, but I recommend the Sigma Art just for the price to performance value. Don't forget to subscribe, and to purchase any of the gear I review, please use the links down there in the information box to keep the channel going. Got a whole bunch of good stuff coming, guys. The D5, the D500, as well as the 1DX Mark II, and also got the NVIDIA GTX 1080 review coming as well. Once again, guys, don't forget to subscribe, and happy shooting.